Now, on your Tuesday morning drive, we are 1 year out from the return of this. Hear from voices all across the golf world for a full preview from Paris. The Ryder Cup captains join us live. As the PGA Tour heads to South Korea this week, our travel insider gives us a sneak peek into the culture that creates champions. YES! And with all of this traveling, what precautions should you take when you journey abroad? And how can you avoid the dreaded jet lag? On this Tuesday, October 17th, 2017. Welcome inside Studio AP. I'm Damon Hack alongside a PGA Tour winner in Robert Dammer and the rest of the crew in just a little bit. Yes, less than a year from the 42nd Ryder Cup matches outside Paris. We just saw the highlight of Reed and Rory. I got a little lightheaded.
I got the bumps. I can't wait. Can we fast forward? Can we have a practice before then? Something. Speaking of exciting, I got something exciting for you. 40 years ago, your mentor, our great friend Arnold Palmer, did something no one had ever done before. He hit a shot off the second level of the Eiffel Tower. It was a windy day. Hit it onto the Champ de Mars, that large green space you see right there in the distance. The ball didn't go very far, but that doesn't matter, Dameron.
No, it doesn't matter. And look how he's kind of posted on his left foot. He wasn't going forward with that one. Off the front edge.
And this morning, I can tell you this, the captains, Thomas Bjorn and Jim Furyk, recreated the shot, and Furyk called it an absolute highlight and honor to be able to do what Arnold Palmer did 40 years ago.
That's pretty awesome. And look at that. They give you a little bit of, if you're scared of heights, you might not want to do that, but it's a beautiful start. And like I said, we still got almost a year to go, and now I'm ready for it.
Yeah, hashtag excitement. We have a 3-hour show for you, lots to do. Let's say good morning to Travis Fulton, Golf Channel Academy lead coach. What do you have for us, Travis?
Hey, good morning, guys. And if we're going to talk Ryder Cup, we got to talk about the dynamic duo, the American duo of Jordan Spieth and Patrick Reed. Why have they been so successful in the 4-ball competition? Got a fun watch and learn coming up on today's show. Matt, what do you have?
All right, I'm going to talk about the Le Golf National, the Albatross course, the venue for the 2018 Ryder Cup. Plus, the group is going to get together and discuss what we hope to see in future Ryder Cup venues. Damon, back over to you.
All right, Mr. Janela, happening now. We are less than a year from the 42nd Ryder Cup matches at, as you just mentioned, the Golf National outside Paris, the annual home of the French Open. Also scheduled to be the host venue for the Olympics in golf in 2024. The captains, Jim Furyk, age 47, a 17-time winner on the PGA Tour, including the 2003 U.S. Open, and Thomas Bjorn, age 46, a 15-time winner in Europe. These are two players, really lions, Robert Damron, of their respective tours. And this is really kind of like a lifetime achievement, an appointment for two players who have really been spokespeople for their respective tours. But how about Jim Furyk in particular? You grew up playing golf against him. You know him very well. What kind of captain do you think he will be?
Well, I'll go back to a story that Tiger Woods told me many, many years ago as we were sitting around and he was talking about Jim Furyk, and actually the same with Steve Stricker. Here are guys that Tiger appreciated and really thought highly of because they didn't have the talent of a Davis Love or other players of that time, the best players of VJ, yet they made tons of money, they won tons of events, they grinded it out. So I think that aspect, he will be very similar to Stricker in the President's Cup. And the other thing, too, is he played through the My Way or the Highway format of Curtis Strange and Lanny Wadkins and Hal Sutton. And he also went in this more recent task force and saw much more success. So he's going to be very open to allowing all this outside information coming in and knowing that he doesn't have all the answers. I want to get from you, the task force, the other players, what information am I going to take in? And the other thing, and one thing that's kind of not thought of as much, if you go back to like Tom Watson, the way he did it, Jim Furyk will still play alongside his players. He will compete. He's not going out for a practice round, watching, meeting them for a cup of coffee afterwards. He is still competing next year with his players, and I think that paying attention to them, and like I said, the attention to detail he has anyway is going to make him a tough captain.
The U.S. team appears to be in maybe the strongest position it's been in quite a long time. Let's continue this conversation right now. Go to London and bring in Ken Schofield, the former executive director of the European Tour and member of the World Golf Hall of Fame, longtime friend of our program. Ken, good morning and good afternoon. I want to start with Thomas Bjorn because he's a known quantity in Europe, a 15-time winner on the European Tour, maybe less known in the United States. What are your earliest recollections of Thomas Bjorn as a professional?
Well, good morning, Damon, and good morning, Robert, from London. It is exciting. Less than a year to go, and just over a year since the Euros left Hazeltine. Very downhearted, but I think in terms of the captaincy of Thomas Bjorn, he'll bring real confidence. I've had the pleasure of knowing him since 1996, when he won at Loch Lomond, his first of 15, as you say, big wins in Europe. Very close to being an Open Golf champion in his own right, and of course second in the 2005 PGA Championship at Baltusrol. I take you back 20 years to the Ryder Cup at Valderrama, and this perhaps gives an insight as to how Thomas appeared in modern Ryder Cups. Seve, of course, was captain. Thomas was a rookie. He'd only played one 4-ball, a winning 4-ball with Ian Woosnam, and on the last day he was put in match 4. He was 4 down to our own Justin Leonard, then Open Golf champion. Seve had commandeered me to get on his captain's buggy, and he got a message that Thomas wanted to see him. Seve thought, Thomas needs me, he's 4 down, he must be panicking. Not at all. Thomas said, Captain, let the guys behind know there's variance in the speeds on greens 2 and 3. Seve knew from that moment that Thomas didn't need him. Thomas got the 4 holes back, tied the match, and got a half point with Justin, and Seve's European guys hung on to the Ryder Cup. Maybe that tells you something about Thomas's baptism with the Ryder Cup, and of course he's continued it throughout the last 20 years.
Yeah, thanks. Ken, what do you think is going to make Thomas Bjorn's captaincy a success, especially facing this team that U.S. team that just dominated the President's Cup?
Well, indeed, he's certainly probably facing the strongest challenge of any European home captain since that 1997 match. There's no doubt about that, Robert, but I think what he will bring is his own. He's played 3 times. He should probably have played more, but he's actually never been on a losing European Ryder Cup team as a player, and he's been involved in every match since 2010 as an assistant captain on 3 occasions, and of course he played on the winning team at Gleneagles in 2014. So he's steeped in that experience. He was close to Darren Clark in Hazeltine, so he'll be burning and seeing the hurt that the 12 guys on that team, if you like, suffered, and he'll want to put that right, so he'll bring a tremendous amount of experience, and he's already made a very shrewd appointment in his first co-captain in Robert Carlson. There are a few European players who are as respected and popular in Europe as the giant Swede. So I think Thomas is up and running, and what he'll need to do, of course, is to look at the makeup of his team, just as Jim Furyk will have to do.
What do you think Thomas's biggest challenge is going to be over this next year as a new captain?
Well, there's no doubt in my mind it will come right in the month before the match, because he is getting the first European captain that I can recall. In fact, I think the first, perhaps in the European history of the Ryder Cup, to get 4 wild cards. That's 1/3 of the team, and he's going to have to get that right. He's going to have to, if you like, tread that balance between, will I take another Thomas Pieters, perhaps Thomas Pieters, who, of the 3 wild cards that Darren took, Darren of course went with Lee, and he went with Martin Keimer, Lee Westwood and Keimer, on experience, and of course we know that they didn't actually produce on the week in Hazeltine. Thomas has got a big task ahead, balancing those playing more or less full-time on the PGA Tour against those playing split European Tour and PGA Tours. So that, I think, will be his biggest challenge in rounding out that team.
Amazing how the script has been flipped considering how the U.S. has performed both at Hazeltine and most recently at Liberty National. Ken, thank you so much. We'll speak to you again next hour. Right now, we send it over to Chantel McCabe.
Morning, Damon. Well, let's take a look. Thomas Bjorn is the guy you want to impress if you're on the European Tour. He sent out this tweet congratulating Tyrrell Hatton on back-to-back European Tour wins, taking home his third trophy at the Italian Open just last week. Now it's time, my favorite time of the day. Happy to have our insider Tim Rosefort with us this morning, all morning long, to talk about some of the notes you have. And let's start with Tyrrell Hatton. And he missed all 4 cuts in all 4 majors this season, had a little lull, but obviously he's back in his best form. What's changed?
Well, what's changed is he's gone back to basics. He went back home to England, Marlow, England. His dad's been his instructor since childhood. As his father, Jeff, told me that he's a young man, but he's got an old golf swing. And basically they built it in their home. He's got a learning studio there. His father considers himself not only an instructor, but an equipment rep and basically the pit crew chief. And in the middle of this slump, if you want to put quotes around it, everybody goes into panic mode. Everybody has an opinion. Tyrrell started buying into it, listening too much about it. Frustrating for both of them. Too many cooks involved in making a meal for me. Jeff told me so. They're real simple. This is Travis Fulton stuff 101. Basically, they work on setup, stance, and 2 positions of the club, halfway back and then at the top. And other than that, they don't micro it, to tell you the truth. And by going back, and he spent 3 months in the United States, he just got away from his basics, basically. And once they had a chance to work things out, you've seen the type of golf that he had produced leading up to this summer. We're starting with the Masters in the spring, where he starts missing cuts in major championships. And now he's on form. And we're talking Ryder Cup this morning. Obviously, Rory would like a rematch with Patrick Reed. I'd love to see a Patrick Reed-Tyrrell Hatton match. I think that between those 2 Bulldogs, that would be definitely worth the watch.
It would be, yeah. And he changed his caddy, changing his attitude, things coming together for Tyrrell Hatton. Well, happening now, Fred Ridley takes over as the 7th chairman of Augusta National, the first to have played in the Masters. His first appearance, by the way, 1976. And Tom Ridge, former governor of Pennsylvania and friend of Ridley, explains why exactly he's a good fit for this role.
If you and I set up to build a profile to build on the legacy of the 6 previous chairmen, the stewardship that's required, I can't believe anybody would better suit that profile than Fred. He'll be an effective leader. You know what? He's got great style. He's an effective communicator. His quiet humility is coupled with an extraordinary passion for the game. I think his life has demonstrated both personally and professionally, and it reflects the highest standards of the game, its character, its integrity. I think he'll be a very effective leader, and the fact that he's been has a tremendous record in the legal profession in the complex world within which we all operate. You pull all those things together, and you find yourself an extraordinarily effective chairman. And perhaps most important, he understands that it's not just the constituency at Augusta National, but it's those who love and cherish the game, whether they play it or not. He understands that to the marrow of his bones. He'll be a very effective chairman.
All right, Rosie, how about Fred Ridley and all of his accomplishments in his professional career? But it all started with golf back in the day. What should we know about his golf background?
Well, you go back to the University of Florida days, not good enough to play in a national championship team in '73. However, had some intervention, went to see Jack Grout, who was Jack Nicklaus's teacher, famed instructor. And you go to the 75 U.S. Amateur, and an incredible run he goes on. He takes out Curtis Strange in the quarters. Andy Bean, his teammate in Florida, in the semis, and Bean has never got over that. As a matter of fact, going into the finals, he pulled him aside and said, if you don't beat Keith Fergus, I'm going to whip your ... So he takes on Keith Fergus, who's the NCAA champion that year, and takes him out to win the U.S. Amateur, which leads to a Walker Cup nomination and a chance to play against Sandy Lyle. Takes Lyle out twice before Lyle goes on to win, obviously, a Masters and an Open Championship. So this is the best player that sat in that seat as a chairman. You probably have to give Chairman Payne maybe 4 aside, basically. And Billy is a bulldog. You know, he'll dig in on you. But Fred is a player, and he brings to this position the knowledge and the perspective of a player, and which is why the chairman put him in the role as chairman of the competition committee and groomed him to this point. Just one of the many facets of the job that's required as chairman at Augusta, but one that he brings the type of knowledge that probably no one ever has before, because they haven't stood in his shoes and played in the Masters and won won Walker Cup matches the way Fred Ridley did.
Big shoes to fill, but talk about having the perfect blend. It's so rare to find, not just the professional experience, but also that perspective, as you said, from the players.
And we'll talk about that more later.
We will talk about that more later. You segued perfectly. Let's find out what's coming up in the next 3 hours. Let's send it over to Damon.
All right, Chantel, T-sheet time. The back-to-back champ Tyrrell Hatton joins the show. Rosie just talked about it. What's been the key to his hot play in Europe? He won in Scotland and followed up with a win in Italy. And how about safety concerns for the PGA Tour players as they prepare for their event in South Korea? What is the PGA Tour doing in advance? And finally, we go live to Paris. We're less than a year from the 42nd Ryder Cup matches. Jim Furyk and Thomas Bjorn, the captains, join us live on this Tuesday edition of Morning Drive. Travis, what do you have, buddy?
Well, coming up later on in the show, it's a new segment here on Morning Drive. It's called Band-Aid or Breakthrough. That's right. All of those thoughts that you have right now and those different swing thoughts and ideas about the swing, short game, and putting, tweet them in. I'm going to take a look at them. I'm going to tell you if it's a Band-Aid or if it's a potential breakthrough to help your game.